What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN. I'm Jude. That's Ethan. And Ethan, it's good to be back with you, my man. We took a little bit of a week off there, but I think it was the most warranted week off we've ever taken, Ethan. That's what I would say, because there really was nothing going on. Like it's funny. We have some stuff to talk about today that isn't even really basketball related, but
Yeah,
it's like at least we have something to talk about. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it after last week. We should have some guests coming on the show as well before the season starts to try to kind of fill in our content gap. But how was your last week since we haven't spoken since then, Ethan?
it was nice, Jude. Now that you mention it, I'm trying to think about what I actually did with the time off. Watched some good Team USA
There you
basketball.
go.
Got some good workouts in, and just kind of just relaxed for my 1 week hiatus from SSPN. How was your off week, my friend?
I watched that. I would say the same thing. Obviously, watched some Team USA.
Nice.
Um, and doing some other stuff, doing some work stuff, just getting things in
Okay.
order, all types of kind of like just stuff where I can make my own schedule but get some income
Hmm.
going. So I've been doing some other moves on the outside, Ethan. Nothing crazy, but just kind of stuff like that. Um,
Money move, Jude.
aside from SSPN. But anyways, Ethan, what we're here to talk about today is you talk about money moves. The
Hmm.
Spurs had some money moves in the Hall of Fame ceremony on Saturday
Yes, they did.
because there were a lot of Spurs on the screen in the stands, presenters, the people who actually got inducted. Obviously, technically, 4 out of the 5 of the overall class that gave
Hmm.
speeches had some connection to the Spurs or played for the Spurs. Obviously, that's Becky Hammond. She was a part of the Silver Stars during her time in the WNBA for her illustrious career there. And then, of course, her coaching career with the Spurs. And then Tony Pop and Pau Gasol as well. So I was just watching. I only watched Tony and a good bit of Pops. I was just finishing those up before we got on here, Ethan.
Hmm.
And it was really nice. I wasn't honestly. I kind of put off watching him because I was just like, not because I didn't want to watch him, but it was just like it's not basketball. It's kind of like what we were
Yeah.
talking about earlier. Like it's just a Hall of Fame ceremony. Like I've already watched all these guys. Like we watch everything Spurs. So it's like, what else could we hear? And then on top of that, it's like, I've already watched Tony's jersey retirement, which was essentially the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but after watching it, Ethan, there was some pretty cool insight and I just really enjoyed it. It kind of got me, obviously we're not close to basketball season, but
Hmm.
it got me a little bit more like, okay, let's just get ready for this next year a little bit, even though we're still a couple months away. But
October's right around the corner. It's gonna sneak up on us, Jude.
very true. We're about halfway through August, so really
Hmm.
we're about a month and a half from preseason. So I guess that is a good time to get a little reared up with some Spurs juice.
I've been reared up, and this is kind of off topic, but like
No,
the
go ahead.
past couple of weeks, I've been watching just randomly like replays. I watched Game One of the Spurs versus Warriors 2013 semifinal game, just because it was on YouTube, the full
Hmm.
game, and
Right.
Manu hit the game winner in the end of double overtime. So just kind of getting back in the swing of things. But the Hall of Fame ceremony, yeah, for those of us that are diehard Spurs fans and have watched, the docu series was great, and also just like
Right.
every interview that they've done, and like you said, the jersey retirement stuff, and all that, and they all like talk about each other's jersey retirement. So we've heard a lot of the same stories and the same
Hmm.
memories that they've kind of gone over, and everybody that they've thanked. And what I've gotten out of it most, Jude, is that the national media has not been able to avoid talking about the San Antonio Spurs because, like it or not, the Hall of Fame really did turn into like a reunion, like a San Antonio Spurs reunion. Like with a bunch of former players, like the guys that were inducted, plus Boris Diaw was there. Um, what's his name? David Robinson was there, and Bruce Bowen was there, just to name a few. But also the opponents, Dirk Nowitzki and D Wade, like they talked about the
Yeah.
Spurs because their careers kind of lined up with the Spurs dynasty. So Dirk talked about how the Spurs, he hated them for a while and how they were the biggest opponent. He couldn't get over the hump. And they made a joke about Michael Finley leaving the Mavericks and then losing that first year to
That
Dallas.
was the story after
Yeah.
this. Whenever you're done talking, that was the story I was going to talk about. Yeah.
So funny. But I mean, he got his ring in '07, so it's not that big a deal. So shout out to Michael Finley. But then D Wade, of course, talking about back to back finals runs against the Spurs. He stole one from us in 2013. We talked about that earlier today. Maybe Danny Green's finals MVP. that was taken away
Right,
from him
right.
because of Ray Allen's three-pointer.
27 in 4 games, bro.
Yeah, that's crazy. Danny Green was having himself a playoff run, really, not just a
Yeah,
series run, but a playoff run for the
yeah.
ages. But then we got our payback, of course, in 2014. So it was nice to see the Spurs get their just due, and overwhelmingly, it felt like the overall public perception of just NBA fans in general was kind of reminiscing about, oh yeah, like Tony Parker was that guy. Like we forget about
Right.
how fundamentally sound and how incredibly like what's the word, consistent offensively that
He
he was
was
for the
like
Spurs.
a top 5 point guard for over a decade
And I went back and
on
watched
one
it,
of the
and
best teams during
for
that
sure,
time period.
I was watching that 2013 series, and it just sparked, like I suggested, videos. It was the Inside the NBA guys talking about the Spurs in that 2013 year, and Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley were talking about. They were like, I know Chris Paul's like the shiny pick, but for me, Tony Parker is the best point guard in the NBA, and that was in 2013. And we forget about how good he was. Like he was in an All Star, and I think he was even in like MVP contention. Obviously, he wasn't like top three, but like top
There
five.
was a
Like
season, I forget
mhm.
which, I want to say it was '07 when he was in MVP
I
contention. I
can't.
could
I
have
don't want
it
to
might have
lie.
been '09, but the point is it was in that later, 2000s range where that was kind of
Hmm.
Tony's prime.
We forgot about how great he was, and it's just nice to sit back. There was no rivalry. It was just let's talk about how great that dynasty was and how good those players were.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point there on how the other guests just kind of naturally, unintentionally intertwined with the whole thing.
Hmm.
You've got D Wade, obviously, you've got those 2 series against the Spurs. And Tony also talked about how his little brother's favorite player is D Wade, and how
Hmm.
every time he comes in the house, even to this day, he's doing the D Wade, like
Hmm.
yelling in the house, just trying to give him a little bit of crap. But like, that's a cool connection that you didn't know about that just happened to fit in.
Hmm.
Tony also mentioned how this was the first time ever that a coach and a player
Yeah.
had been inducted together. And obviously, that's just super cool for the Spurs and just overall that it's the first thing and it's like the most Spurs thing ever. But I
Yeah.
think to me, the reason why it was cool for Tony and Pop is because of their, roller coaster unique relationship.
For
Like
real.
like that is the coach player combo of any that I feel like it's just fitting because of their ups and downs. It's fitting that they that it something just the way that relationship blossomed over his career. It's fitting
Hmm.
that they were the tandem that ended up being the first to go in the Hall of Fame. And then of course, like you said, with Dirk, you've got the in-state connection, so naturally his biggest rival, obviously the Rockets had some good years here and there, but his biggest rivalry really during his career that he had to get over the hump to win a championship was San Antonio. It was Tim
Hmm.
Duncan. um and it was like he said, he mentioned how he hated him with the way that when you come into the league the way that he did. But like you said, the Michael Finley story, the thing that I really loved about that was not just the fact that like he left the Mavericks to go play for the Spurs and then loses to the Mavericks, but the fact that Tony said he saw after that game that Michael was like destroyed, distraught, like
Hmm.
crying. And he said that really fueled him the whole 2007 season. He said like his whole goal that year not just was to win the championship, but specifically just that moment of that memory of Mike crying after losing to the team he had just left to win a championship for. That's something that I had never heard before, and the fact that was a big motivation for Tony just kind of once again ties into the camaraderie and all the Spurs culture stuff that we've seen. So it wasn't necessarily anything new, Ethan, but
Hmm.
it was new in the sense of like new information and little tidbits that kind of fit into the story overall. And then the other thing that I had written down for Pop um, was one, the fact that he went on a sabbatical. Like that's the way he described it, like
Yeah.
a 1-year coaching sabbatical, where he basically just shadowed Larry Brown and Roy Williams at Kansas and UNC, North Carolina, excuse me, not South, not Southern Cal. I mean, that explains a lot. I didn't
Hmm.
know that. It's like, okay, well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people who can do that and not turn out the way Pop does. But still, when you hear that, I'm like, oh, that's like a major detail I've somehow never heard before. Like, obviously, I knew he was the coach, at multiple military academies, his history as a player, playing at Air Force, coaching at Air Force. I knew all of those things, but I didn't know that prior to that, or in the midst of his coaching career, he took a 1-year trip to just go shadow two of the best programs, in history, other than Duke. So that
sure.
explained a lot. And then the last little note, there were two other things that I had. One, the San Antonio fans that showed up.
Yeah, I know.
And like literally, and Pop is even like, guys, why? How are you?
He told them to shush.
Yeah, like, why are you here? Like, as much as like, how did you even get in here? Like,
I
look
know.
at all of the other people here. It was the most San Antonio thing ever. So that was great. But then also the Team USA moment, to see how much that meant to him.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about, I just, because we're so far removed from it, I forget about the COVID angle. Like, for that to be that important to him, and for him to have to work through all the crap that he did, and probably for a second thinking, because I think they delayed it a year, right? That wasn't until 2021.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine your Pop, you have this military background. This is your dream. And you could even see it in the speech. You could tell that was, as much as the Spurs are his main thing, obviously, like, you could tell with his military background and just, everything about Pop, you could just tell the way that he was talking, that was his dream. The fact that he got to do that, for a second, probably thinking it might never happen. You could just see how much that meant to him. And Pop is not that, even though he didn't like outwardly cry in that moment, he just doesn't show that much emotion. Even if you looked at his face, it still felt kind of stone face. If you watch that moment, you can tell, like, that's just more emotion than Pop ever shows if you've grown up watching him like you and I have. So that is my synopsis on the Hall of Fame, Ethan. Those were my favorite moments.
Yeah, that's the most emotional he got, aside from when he brought up his family and his wife passing away. So that tells you a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, Ethan. So a nice Hall of Fame ceremony for the Spurs. Shout out to Becky, Pop, and Pau, and Tony, of course, all getting in the Hall of Fame. So shout out to the Spurs, Hall of Fame takeover. It's fitting. It's fitting with what happened in the draft, Ethan.
It's suddenly Spurs mania, bro. It is our time.
That's what I'm saying. Whether the people like it or not, that's where we're at. But moving on, Ethan, there is some other news in Spurs world. And it ties into something that you and I have talked about, and really you specifically kind of brought up the idea of a while back. And that was when we were doing our full roster breakdown. After the Payne trade, you brought up how, you hadn't really seen much on his social media. There had been other guys who had been traded, like Reggie Bullock. We'd been seeing him tweet a lot during Summer League, and we just hadn't really seen anything about the Spurs on Payne's social media. So you were like, maybe, he doesn't want to come here. Maybe, this is a sign that he could just be somebody that we cut, and it's just going to be Reggie and Chetty who make the team. And he could have just been, an asset to pick up with a free pick because of the scenario that the Spurs are in right now. But then there was a tweet that came out this week, or not a tweet, it was a video. I mean, I'm sure there was a tweet of it too, but there was an Instagram live from Payne where he was on there basically saying that he didn't want to leave Phoenix, and he felt like Phoenix wanted to win a chip, and that he could have helped him with that because he's tough, Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong.
That's what he said, y'all. Like I kind of joked with that there, but if you guys didn't see, he literally went on Instagram Live and said he didn't really want to leave Phoenix, and he felt like he could have helped them win a championship still.
There's two sides of this that need to be looked at. The first one, I think, is the one that most people are ignoring, which is he's not completely wrong. He is stating a fact. Like, Phoenix is a much better team right now than the San Antonio Spurs. He's not old, but he's not young. So he wants to be competitive. He wants to go for that championship. So just objectively, Phoenix is where he would want to be. I have no problem with him saying that. Again, for me, the nerve-wracking thing is he still hasn't mentioned San Antonio at all. So despite him going on that tirade a little bit about him being tough and him wanting to win with Phoenix, he didn't he didn't have a caveat where he was like, but at the same time, happy to be in San Antonio. Let's get to work. Like
Right.
or even like, thanks for San Antonio for picking me up. Like let's do like not a word about the Spurs or San Antonio or even Wemby. Nothing. So I really, I don't know if there's anything we can really take from this yet, Jude. I don't, I don't know if he's said a concrete opinion either way on his opinion about playing with San Antonio.
I don't think there's anything we can take from it either, other than the fact that there is more. It is not guaranteed, which really this was the reality of the situation. But I think when we all saw the campaign trade, we were just like immediately, he's going to fit into the rotation. That was immediately probably, most Spurs fans' reactions. That was
Yeah,
probably you and I's
for
reaction,
sure.
right? But the reality of it is that he's just not. I mean, with the Spurs, almost with every player that they pick up, other than like their core group of guys, he's just not guaranteed to be on the team. He
Yeah,
totally could make the team. I think talent wise, he has the ability, but
for sure.
the Spurs take in a lot of other things whenever it comes to having players on their roster. I mean, we've the example that I would say, obviously, campaign is not. The examples I'm about to use are nowhere near as good as campaign, but like think about an Al-Farouq Aminu, and I can't remember the other player, but it was another player that we assigned or that we acquired in a sign and trade that we just ended up like they came to training camp and then we just cut them.
Hmm.
Obviously this is a different situation from campaign when it comes to talent, but we have acquired guys and cut them. Lamar Stevens,
Hmm.
example number one, right? Point guard is definitely much more of a need, and I would like to have him on the team, but um, it's ironic to say that the off the court stuff might affect him just with the way that rant looked when you consider that DWI Devontae is the other option.
Yeah,
Um,
who is suspended for 2 games, I think.
right, right. I mean, I don't. I should stop calling him DWI Devontae. I'm just saying that like he's got some literal legal stuff, so it's kind of hard to be like, oh well, campaign's off the court personality isn't going to mesh well with the team, and they're going to go with Devontae Graham instead
Yeah.
when he just had some legal issues, but still those issues happened before. And I guess this is, well, no, he made this live after he was traded to San
Hmm.
Antonio. So this
Yeah.
isn't San Antonio where the DWI happened in Charlotte. Um, and I don't know. I mean, everybody gets a second chance. I'm not sure how the Spurs look at the Devontae situation. I'm not going to try to pretend to. I would say that I think all Spurs fans would think that more the Spurs are more stringent
Hmm.
whenever it comes to that type of stuff. But I think, Ethan, you watched this video, you sent it to me, and most Spurs fans who have watched this video, who are watching us right now, I think they can tell that the Spurs just might have some questions about that video
I
and the
think
way
the
he was
question
talking.
I think the Spurs have less to do with it than campaign. I think the Spurs, despite that video, would still like to bring him in,
Hmm.
go into the season with
That's
him
very
as the
true.
backup point guard. The question for me is still on campaign. Does he want to play for San Antonio? And I don't think it's a question of personality. I mean, I don't know campaign, obviously. I have very little experience watching him in interviews or anything because he hasn't played for any team that I care about until now. Um, but I don't think it's a personality issue where he's going to, rub guys in the locker room the wrong way. I think it would simply come down to where he is in his career. He just wants to be in a place where he can compete for a championship.
No,
And that's the question.
yeah, really, I did that roundabout thing at the beginning. I'm forgetting exactly what I said. I was just saying it's not guaranteed that he's going to be on the roster, and
Yes.
that's very true. Just when it comes, because I was kind of talking from like an evaluation standpoint in that aspect, and that includes on and off the court. That's what I was talking about there. But the other aspect has nothing to do with the Spurs evaluation, which is the process that they always go through. But it's also just, does he want to come here or not?
Yes.
That's probably the bigger point with the video that we're talking about, and not posting anything or talking about the team at all, because there have been other guys who have done that. So
Hmm.
now, with that being said, like you said, it's not guaranteed that we're going to trade him or anything. I think the Spurs would still love to have him here this year as a rotational piece as a point guard, especially when you consider his contract and it being an expiring deal, that say Blake makes a jump at the beginning, halfway through this season, but maybe Blake takes a jump and I don't think this is going to happen, but if he takes a jump, really progresses this year in the G League, you might be able to trade campaign for some, a second round pick or something, and bring up Blake in the second half of the season if his progression happens. There's a lot of, the point is he's a very favorable asset on the court and as a contract. So it's something the Spurs would want to bring into this season. Is it something he wants to do? The signs are not as bright as the other guys that we've brought on. I think that's the best way that we can put it.
If you could turn off morale and chemistry and personality like you can in 2K, I think he's the perfect fit. And I think he has the highest chance of the three guys that we brought in to be on the team as far as talent and just positional need. Like, we have wings. Like, if we lose Reggie Bullock, like, okay, well, we could bring up Champagny. We have a lot of wings at that position. We have depth. But the point guard spot, it's Trey Jones and it's Blake Wesley, and we're not entirely sold on whether or not Blake Wesley is ready. So he would be a guaranteed, like, fit and rotational piece for the team, most definitely.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. Just something to keep an eye on there. I know it's not happy news for Spurs fans, but
it's news.
There might be a chance that he doesn't want to play here. So it's news and the reality of the situation. But some good stuff, Ethan. Some good stuff. You sent me another tweet today that I was not expecting out of the blue. Victor Wembanyama is doing his best Jeremy Sohan impression, bro.
I love it.
I love it too. It fits the it's creating the personality of this team.
Can I say something as a straight male?
For sure.
Victor Wembanyama is a handsome kid. He's a handsome dude. Let me rephrase. He's a handsome dude. I don't want to say kid. That's a weird thing to say. He's a handsome dude.
He looks good, man.
And with that haircut, yeah. I like him and Jeremy in the front court together. That's gonna be. Yeah. I hope he keeps it. I hope they do that every time
together. They need
change.
No, I mean you can change it throughout the season, but like
invert the colors. Maybe
it needs to be in sync. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
I think we need, because it's kind of like the SpongeBob vibes again. For those of y'all who didn't see, we didn't get to see the full picture, but go to Jeremy Sohan's Instagram story and you'll get to see the video. It's Jeremy in there. He's got his normal blonde hair. It doesn't look like it's the blonde and purple like he had for a little bit. It looked like it was just the normal blonde.
Yeah, I think so.
But Wembanyama, on the other hand, he has like the similar to the hair that Jeremy had where it looked like he had the SpongeBob flowers on it, but it's not flowers. It's just like blonde and then like a purple blob, but it doesn't look ugly. Like a blob is a bad way to describe it, but it looks good is what I'm trying to say.
It does look good. My only question is, did he and Jeremy make this decision together, or did Vic just show up to camp today or to workouts, whatever they're doing, with the hair?
I would expect, to be honest, like with the way it looked, I'm like, I feel like he had to get it done by the same person Sohan gets it done. Even if he did it covert, with Jeremy's reaction in the Instagram video,
like a surprise.
It looks like it could be a surprise. Yeah. But I feel like the similarities, even if Jeremy didn't know, the similarities are too close. The hair, it looks way too close to the SpongeBob hair that Sohan had.
You know what? Let's try and get this video viral here. This little clip here, Jude.
Okay.
The Spurs, everybody on the roster needs to dye their hair exactly the same in unison with Jeremy Sohan for at least one game. Every player. I'm talking Dougie McBuckets.
They should do it like 3 games. No, they should make it a instead of like, you do the bobblehead nights.
Yes.
They'll just do a hair dye night and the whole team comes out and whatever, Jeremy came up with.
Let's do it. I think we have to. Maybe like their numbers, like in the back of their head, like in color. I'm with.
They can do, like the nicknames.
Oh yeah, like the nickname jerseys, but it's in the hair. Yeah. I'm with this, bro. Let's make it happen.
Oh my gosh.
Make sure it's on a TNT game so people actually see it.
Okay, here's actually at Spurs right now. If you're listening, get you like a beanie or a cap like that people can wear of Jeremy's hair. Yes, as it's dyed, and you can change it throughout the season. See, that's even better.
Get this man a job.
Right? See, because you could easily do that. They do T-shirts every night, bro. Everybody in the crowd is wearing the Jeremy hair. Come on now.
Dude, that's such a good idea. That's like a Disney World level idea.
I know, man. They need me. They need us so bad. Oh my God. Anyways, Ethan, there is some actual basketball stuff that we can talk about.
Yes.
Do you have any idea what it is?
Is this the top 5?
No.
No?
See, I'm throwing you a curveball. We are getting to that.
Why don't you fill me in?
I figured you had no idea. That's why I asked. Because I forgot about it. There's one Spur playing right now. Well, he will be playing momentarily. But that's Sandro Mamu playing for the Georgian national team, Ethan.
Shout out my buddy Mamu,
No.
bro.
Okay, yeah, we could. Right. It is, he's gonna play how he's gonna play. But the point that I'm bringing him up is because he's like their LeBron. Like, I was watching highlights earlier today, dude, and he is like the team. So just, after watching that and going through that little highlight deep dive again, I'm excited to watch. Georgia basketball is going to be appointment viewing when the World Cup starts, Ethan. It's not just going to be Team USA. I'm watching Mamu out there cross people up. Dude, They were playing, I forget who they were playing, but it was like an overtime game, and he was the only reason they were in the game. Like, he just kept scoring, and the other team they were playing, they couldn't stop him. I'm going to look up who it was because I sent this to you earlier.
The World Cup's going to be really fun to watch this year.
Yes, because of all the different guys that it's basketball with NBA level talent.
Yeah.
Not during a time of year where you would normally get it. But then on top of that, you've got the FIBA rules and like the court being a little bit shorter. Just the little FIBA nuances that also kind of add a little bit of intrigue to it.
It's like watching 2003 playoffs, but like if every game was competitive.
That's very true. It kind of is like going back in the time machine a little bit.
Be on the lookout for my Australian boys, Patty and Josh Giddey.
Oh yeah.
I think they blew out New Zealand. No, not New Zealand. Who'd they blow out today?
Yeah, Giannis isn't playing. That's the only thing about the World Cup is that a lot of times, players do take it off, but still, for the most part, we're gonna get a pretty good crop of players. And then the Olympics that'll be coming up. That'll be super fun. But yeah, no, that was against Turkey. That was against Turkey in the qualifiers. Mamu had 20 and 12. So yeah,
that's a lot for FIBA play, by the way. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like Mamu, he's really like he's their team. So we don't really have anybody else on the Spurs to go watch. And Ethan, another thing that kind of ties into this, I was going through all the possibilities of the potential lineups in my notes, because it could be all of them. And there are a lot where, it works out to where we're going to need, and this will depend what happens with the lineups. Like if we bring Jeremy off the bench, then this won't be the case. But if Jeremy starts, basically every scenario, Mamu is going to be the backup 4. Unless, we want to move Shetty there. But really with the way Mamu played last year and his size and versatility, I feel like he would be, and also just his knowledge of the system, like being in San Antonio longer.
Yeah.
I think he would be, as of right now, the front runner. If it's not going to be Jeremy playing the 4 off the bench, then it would be him. And so I just think that this Georgian national team opportunity will be another opportunity for him to grow, in a situation where he's going to, be the main scorer, the main distributor, the leader of the team. So I'm just excited to watch him show off his sauciness and watching that again, I got reminded like of the good things we saw from him last year. Yes, he was kind of in that latter half of the season where, there was lower competition against other teams, but I was at that game where he basically took on Jokic one-on-one in the fourth quarter and got the Spurs a dub. So it also reminded me of the potential of Sandro Mamu, Ethan.
Well, playing in the World Cup will only help him get ready to compete against Reggie Bullock, Chetty Osman, hell, even Doug McDermott for that matter. He could be the backup 4. We have no idea. So shout out to him.
Definitely. But we're going to wrap up this episode, Ethan, with a little bit of a list. We haven't done lists in a while. This is just something fun that came into my head here. We're like I said, we're trying to think of stuff to do right now, Ethan.
Honestly.
So what I decided to come up with is our top 5 Spurs on the roster as of right now, just based on potential, like their overall projection, where we think they could be. And, when I came up with this idea, Ethan, I was like, oh, this will be interesting. I wonder what it'll be. But then when I got to listing the players, it was actually pretty easy. But the list is still pretty fun to talk about. And I think it represents the potential that the Spurs have moving forward whenever it comes to their young core. So I'll let you go off rip, Ethan. Since I already made my list, do you want to go one by one? Do you want to start from bottom
Oh,
top? Like, how do you want to go with this? You want to start 5? You want to start 1? Do you want to do all 5? Go. I think we should do one at like both go one by one.
okay. Do you want to start at 5 or 1?
We should, yeah. Let's do 5. We can
Okay.
kind of lead up. Obviously, well, actually, let's do 1 down because 1 is actually the most like that's the easiest to guess. Now that I think about it,
True.
yeah.
At 1, Victor Wembanyama, the big man from France. Do I need to explain why? I mean, he's 7'4", 8-foot wingspan, can handle the ball like Kevin Durant, can, pull up from mid-range, 3-point range, can score at all 3 levels, has a post-up ability. We saw the bank shots in Summer League. He's going to average 4 blocks a game right off the rip. That's not even a problem. All he has to do is put on a little bit of muscle, and it looks like he's been doing that. He's been in the gym, and he's been away from his phone. It seems like he has not been social media active. So, the sky is literally the limit. He is the extraterrestrial, according to Nike. So space is the limit for him.
I ain't got nothing else to say, and I just wanted you to say it because, I needed to hear it from you once more, Ethan.
I can't wait to see him, bro.
I'm so excited to watch him play. And also, I did see a report from Mark Stein from the Stein line. Used to be a reporter for the New York Times. I think he might still be, although they disbanded their sports department recently, so I don't know. But still, has a Substack, mainline NBA reporter. He said that tentatively. I don't know with the preseason, but for the regular season debut, Victor Wembanyama, as of right now, is good to go against the Mavericks, October 26th. Saw that on Real GM today.
It's against the Mavericks?
Mm-hmm.
In San Antonio or in...
I do not know. Let me check that right now because you should know that. Actually,
if it's in Dallas, your boy is there.
Let me see. Oh my goodness.
Pause the list for one moment while we figure this out. Please
pulling it up.
In Dallas.
Oh my Ronnie. Nice job updating the schedule, NBA.
What, they didn't update it?
It says no games are available at this time. Stop. Oh my goodness.
I thought I checked not too long ago, so that's why I was like baffled that I'd missed that.
Okay, here we go. Here's ESPN. Oh, they say no data available. This is so... Oh my goodness.
It'll be announced in a bit.
Basketball Reference.
Maybe they haven't announced where it is.
That's probably why he reported that. Okay, well, here, let me at least just go. Let me show the people what we're talking about so I don't just seem like somebody who's just saying something.
You would, Jude. You would.
Without not saying it. It's so funny. You're right. I literally actually don't have any reason to pull this up, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay. Here we go. There we go. So y'all probably see it right there. It's at the very top. Victor Wembanyama scheduled to debut on October 25th versus the Mavs. If I go and click on it, it's just Victor Wembanyama, the NBA debut, the 25th. Y'all see Mark Stein of Substack. If y'all want to look up who Mark Stein is, y'all can go ahead and do it. He's been covering the NBA for forever, and that would probably make sense that he put it out in his Substack article before the schedule was actually released.
Yeah, okay.
But good for you to know. Don't know if it's home or away yet, Ethan, but please definitely something to keep an eye on for sure.
Please be here.
Okay, so back to our list. Obviously, Victor at number 1. You said it all. There was the Nike program that he just did. Oh, I just wanted to touch on, this is what I wanted to touch on. The fact that he really has gone radio silent. Like we really saw him go away for a month. And then like now it's like the past 2 days, I saw the Nike ad where he's promoting all their new like jumpsuits, because he's the extraterrestrial, he's the future. So they're marketing him with all their new stuff that they come out with. But then on top of that, also the hair vid as well. Like you didn't hear a blip other than the past 2 days. And when you think about it, that's about a month since the draft, a little bit over a month actually. So I'm glad to see him come out of his hole, but I'm also glad he was there. If that
Me too.
makes sense.
I liked it.
All right, our second most valuable Spur, Ethan. The floor is yours.
Devin Vassell.
Ooh, interesting. Give me your reasoning.
I'm really high on Devin Vassell, and I think he plays a position and has the skill set to be an all-star, to be a prolific scorer, to be in the same conversation as guys like Devin Booker, Klay Thompson. You can throw Bradley Beal in there.
Damn.
I mean, I'm really high on him. I know he only averaged about 19 points a game this year on an injury-ridden season, but he has come back every season bigger, literally stronger, and better in every statistical category. Defensively, we know who he is. We know he's that guy. He came into the league as a 3-and-D guy, and now he's a 3-level scorer that can also lock up your best perimeter player. So just keep working on efficiency and get more shots. I mean, he could be, I don't want to say that. He could be the Robin to Victor Wembanyama's eventual Batman once he hits that ceiling.
Yeah, I'm really high on Devin too. It's hard for me to. I really like the Devin Booker comparison. I also agree that he has the ability to be an all-star and has the ability to be a prolific scorer. And when you look at the way that he has developed so far as a lottery pick, um, you only expect him. He didn't even really get to show it last year. That's the
Yeah.
crazy thing, because he only played 39 games. And that's why he felt so much like the most consistent player on the team, Ethan, because we saw him in shorter bursts. And I know that may seem counterintuitive, but because we saw him in shorter bursts, and you would think that when you're in shorter bursts, it would be harder for you to get in rhythm. And we saw maybe a little bit of that here and there, like on his first 2 games back when he would come back, when he had the big layoff, right? Or no, he was done for the season after that, right? Or did he come back?
I don't actually remember.
But regardless, still, there were times where he took, even before the big surgery, with the way that we operated this season, there would be times where he'd take 2 to 3 games off. And then, but that was all the guys. When you're not in, getting in rhythm and you're not playing consistently, you're going to have to shake the rust off, those first couple games. Look at Victor Wembanyama's first summer league game. But going back to just his overall skill set and his potential, I'm blanking. I really tried to save it there, Ethan, and I blanked where I was at.
I'll
I
say
know we're
for you.
talking about Devin.
Rip Hamilton. That's all you got to say. My guy is a better Rip Hamilton. He doesn't even need a mask. That's how good he is.
Yeah. Honestly, I have nothing to add. I think he's going to be really good. There's just something else I forget. I felt, that his playmaking as well. I really felt like that took a jump this year. And this is really what I was getting back to earlier. And that's the fact that because we saw him in such short stints, this is what I was talking about earlier. It was almost like he was more consistent in the short stints. So we saw him for less. And
I know what you're saying. There was not a gaping hole. Like, we only saw him for so little time, so that we don't really remember any glaring negative games or bad performances that would have harped on his potential.
Yes, exactly. We didn't get to, because we didn't see him for a full season. We didn't see, some of the mistakes that we might have. But still, the flip side of that, Ethan, is that whenever you're not playing consistently and you're playing at that high a level in the 39 games that you do play, like, that's also really hard to do too. So that ties into just all of the stuff that you were talking about. It felt like he turned into a walking bucket last year, and he was already an above average defender with length and switchability. And when I say he's a walking bucket, it's like you could just throw him into any scenario, regardless of the rust or the lineup, because we know that was completely different from, game to game last year. And he was doing the same thing every time. And it was consistent in the short bursts. So it just, like you said, it was very impressive on a multitude of levels last year. And he's basically already at, I mentioned this in the some video we did this summer talking about the shooting guards. I think it was the first position breakdown we did. And he's basically already at 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists after last season. It was like 18, 4-4 is where he was at basically, but still most games, obviously you have a down game here and there. He was around, and sometimes it was closer to 25, 5-5. And when you think about those numbers, that's why it spits Devin Booker.
Mm-hmm.
He's like Devin Booker who can play defense. I know he's still got ways to go, or some seasons under his belt to get where Devin is offensively. The other Devin, that is Devin Booker. But man, you can see the potential in his off the dribble scoring on top of the defense we already had seen.
1,000%. And what's your number 2?
So it is not Devin. I have Jeremy Sohan as my number
Okay.
2. And that's just because overall potential, that I think he has the second highest ceiling on the team. I know I've only seen one season of him. I think his height, his size, and his versatility in everything. I know I use that phrase a lot, obviously, when it comes to his defense, but we've talked about it so many times on this podcast, Ethan, his ability to get better everywhere. The little, the strides that we saw in so many different areas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, like, for this example, I didn't see all of the type of stuff that I saw from Jeremy in his rookie season. And granted, Devin wasn't starting in his rookie season and was playing a lot in Austin as well. So that's a key factor. But, it took until this past season for Devin to really be able to be comfortable with his ball handling. You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing that from Jeremy this year. And then on top of that, I'm seeing his jump shot go from me thinking it never has any hope to he might have a chance to be a 30% 3-point shooter. And now, like 30% isn't, otherworldly, but, I went from thinking he had no chance of having any potential there to, okay, Jeremy might be able to be a guy that if they leave him open, he's going to make them pay most of the time. And that's kind of what he turned into at the end of the year. Now, granted, that's still, somewhere in the 20s percentage wise, but still, like, there were just, on top of, his IQ, the way that he learned the offense, the way that he was able to incorporate a little bit more of some post ups. Obviously, as the season progressed, we saw him taking the ball up the floor a little bit more. Just all these little different things that I haven't seen. I have not seen a Spurs rookie do all of the different types of things he does
Mm-hmm.
in a long time. And granted, a lot of that, like, as I'm thinking about that, the other person who was popping into my head was Kawhi, but it's like the situation that Kawhi was in, it was like, go play defense. We've already got all these other guys who know the offense, who can score. Jeremy being on, the team that was, tanking last year. And then on top of that, being a rookie and getting the opportunity to start, which is also completely unheard of in San Antonio. The opportunity that he had and the circumstances that he was in, allowed him to showcase a lot of the stuff that he got to showcase. So maybe there might be some other Spurs rookies in the past that could have been able to do the things that he did, but because the scenarios were different, I haven't seen a Spurs rookie do that in my lifetime. So, I'm not mad at all for you putting Devin at number 2. And really, honestly, I think 2 through 3 could be interchangeable.
For sure.
As we'll continue to move on with some of the other guys. But for me, when it just comes to overall outlook, potential for their career, I do have Jeremy a little bit ahead of Devin. But I have Devin at number 3. So I won't talk about Devin at number 3 since you already talked about him. But give me your number 3, Ethan, who may be Jeremy Sohan, but maybe it's somebody else.
Well, you're right about 2 through 4. The difference between 2 through 4 is minuscule. So, if your list varies from ours, so be it. You probably have just as strong of argument as I
Right.
do. But 3 for me would be Jeremy Sohan for all the reasons that you mentioned, the versatility, really being a Swiss Army knife. The only reason I have Devin above him at 2 is I think Jeremy, while he does have that Kawhi-esque ability, that ceiling that he could eventually reach, where he can score at all 3 levels on top of being an incredible defender and on top of having just better measurables than a Devin Vassell and being more physically imposing, which would put him obviously as a better player. Like, I understand that. But at the same time, he also has a higher chance than Devin of becoming a role player in a sense, only because he does all of those different things. So he wouldn't necessarily be a 25 a game scorer. Like, he has that potential as well. He could fall into that Draymond Green category, which there's nothing wrong with that. Draymond Green is a Hall of Fame player. Like, he is a champion. There's so many great things you could talk about Draymond Green. But when you're ranking the big three with Golden State, it's Steph, Clay, Draymond. And is Draymond more valuable than Clay? Probably. But if you're looking back on numbers and, all-star appearances, Clay probably has a better career and just strictly a better scorer, better shooter. So that's where I would give Devin the nudge as far as potential over Jeremy. But you're right. I mean, it could go either way because Jeremy does, like you said, have that Kawhi level defense, and he has improved so drastically from game 1 of last season to game 82 of last season in so many different areas, predominantly scoring as in the post as well as off the dribble and as a spot up shooter. So, I love Jeremy Sohan. I'm excited to see what he can do. I disagree only in one thing that you said. I think his ball handling needs to get a lot better. I mean, I know he brought the ball up every once in a while last year, but that's, to me, his most glaring deficiency, even worse than his shooting. I think if he improves as a ball handler, he is immediately worlds better in so many different ways. And if he's better at shooting, that really just improves one thing, shooting. But if he's a better ball handler, it improves every facet of his game.
Yeah, as much as I talked about his playmaking, and I'm thinking about, and I was talking about like him taking the ball up the floor as the season progressed, and those little stints. Like we've talked about it before, where I was watching some of the overall top plays from the season, and Dan Weiss is like point Sohan, right? Because we saw that a little bit more as the season progressed. But I still agree with you there whenever it comes to his ball handling. Like I said, I'm not trying to be super contradictory here because we did see him distribute this season. We saw him
Yes,
make some
for
great
sure.
passes. But at the same time, we also saw him lose the ball a lot as well too. I remember not just there are some plays where he brought the ball up and he got ripped because he was just a little bit too lenient with his dribble. He lets his dribble, go almost up to his shoulder sometimes. And these are
Yeah,
super nitpicky things, but it's like, they're also NBA players. But it's like those are the type of little things whenever it comes to his ball handling that cause turnovers for us this past season. So I would definitely like to see him clean that up a little bit because with the playmaking ability he already has, Ethan, like you said, it's almost more important for him to get that down than shooting because then you can get everything out of the playmaking ability that you already have. Where with shooting, he kind of has to build that ability up. You know what I'm saying?
for sure. 1000%. And if he's a better ball handler, he's immediately, in my eyes, he can be small forward. He can play that Kawhi Leonard, Scottie Pippen role. And then he can work on his jump shot because it's not terrible. Like, it will go in if he's wide open.
We also saw the improvement last season, and that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like whenever it comes to him, the reason like why I had him at number 2 is because like when I see the little improvements he made last season in so many different areas, it gives me confidence that he can continue to do that in like all those little areas for the rest of his career. So when I
1000%.
think of that, I'm like, okay, in 2028, like you said, he might be a 3-level scorer. You never know. But at the same time, Ethan, what I would like to say, and I totally get where you're coming from, and I just thought of it more whenever you were talking, is just straight up, Devin's offensive and defensive games are just like way more established. Like his offensive game specifically is
Hmm.
like check mark for both of those. Where with Jeremy, as of right now, it's just check mark on defense. And that kind of ties into also you kind of saying that there might be a higher chance that he could turn into a role player, even though he has the potential to be an all-star. And I mean, we've heard the Manu comparison, and
Hmm.
that's about. I mean, he was talking about his tenacity. Pop was in that comment, but still, with what we just addressed, maybe there's an opportunity for Jeremy to kind of be the heir to that throne. Um, Especially with his history as a 6-man at Baylor as well and his skill set like you talked about. But who knows?
True.
We don't know. We've talked about it so many times. I definitely think he's a starting caliber player and a franchise caliber player. That's why I had him at number 2. But I still get where you're coming from and understand your argument for putting Devin at number 2. And that leads us to number 4, who is another guy. I feel like we're going to have the same guy here, and
Hmm.
he's somebody else that we believe could kind of be number 2 or number 3 on this list, depending on how the season goes. And that's Keldon Johnson, Ethan. Is that who you had at number 4?
It's not who I had at
It's
number 4.
not who you had at number 4. Interesting.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, I'm sure probably who I had at number 5 is you had at number 4, but I had Keldon at number 4. Man, dang it.
I
I
have him at
was
5. I have him at 5.
I was kind of I thought for a second you were gonna have him at 3 actually.
Hmm.
But yeah, I have Keldon at 4, man. We've talked about it so many times on this channel. The sentence I think that can sum up everything, Ethan, is we think Keldon gets too much hate.
For sure.
That I think he has the potential to be an all-star caliber player. Is he a perennial all-star? I don't know about that. But I think definitely there could be a circumstance in a team that he could be on where he could be an all-star. Also, if he continues his improvement and has another 25-7 season and is one of the best players on this team, he might be able to prove me wrong, because that's the other thing about Keldon, which is the same theme with the rest of these guys, and that's that he's got better every year. You
Hmm.
know, this was probably the first year, like in a specific category, we saw him take like a step back, like after jumping up, and that's of course just his shooting with the way that the beginning of the season went and then how the rest of the season went. But other than that, he was the leader of the team. It's the same theme that we've had from Keldon every year in his career so far. It's just now he was the most experienced and oldest guy on the team that had a significant role. I mean, well, I guess Zach is older than him, but what I'm trying to say is he was the eldest Spur. How about that? Let's put it that way. Who's been here the longest out of the young guys and the crew that we have. I've said so much about Keldon so many times. I don't really think there's much else to say here,
Hmm.
other than just what he did for the team this season and how he has experience in that leader role on top of his talents and just being committed to whatever the Spurs throw at him. There's been a comment recently. This will be the last thing I'll say about Keldon, Ethan. There's all this speculation about him going to the bench, and that's why I kind of opened it up with we feel like he gets too much hate. But the thing that he said when they asked him in a press conference about how you feel about coming off the bench, and if I'm Keldon in this situation, dude, I would have responded, well, I don't know. If I had the Spurs training, I probably would have responded pretty good. But the point is that Keldon Johnson had every right in that moment to be ticked off by that question. But
Hmm.
instead, he was just like, I'll do whatever the team wants me to do because I play for them. And like, I
Yeah.
just signed a contract. I just signed an $80 million contract with the Spurs. Like,
Hmm.
it was almost like he answered the question like, "Do y'all not watch Spurs basketball?" like he was literally just like, if the team wants me to come off the bench, I'm coming off the bench." Like it
Yeah.
it wasn't a discussion. It was just whatever the team wants me to do. Oh, y'all just let the lights go out.
In a way, you look kind of cool.
Don't worry, we'll fix it. You talk, Ethan. I'll be right back.
Yeah, the Keldon Johnson. I have him at 5, and Jude's probably surprised because I am a massive Keldon Johnson supporter. I love Keldon Johnson. I think he is incredibly disrespected. I think he did things for us last season that will go down in Spurs lore, but the average fan will not remember. He was by far and away the best player on the court for us last season. I don't think that's a question. Some people like Devin better than him. Obviously, I think Devin has a higher ceiling than Keldon. But last year, Keldon was a better player. This season, he has a very strong chance at being the best player on the court, even next to Wemby, because Wemby is still only 19 years old. He has not blossomed yet into what he will become. But next season, and maybe even the season after, Keldon Johnson has a strong likelihood of being the best player or the second best player on the team. He's an incredible finisher. He has made strides as a playmaker, as a shooter, despite slumps. But we think that that's really cause of him playing next to different guys every single night, being the only consistent player for us on the team. So I don't think that will be something that carries over in the next season. I think he will have solidified that and playing against guys that can also draw to like a Devin Vassell, a Jeremy Sohan, Trey Jones facilitating. That will just give him more open looks, and his numbers will kind of average out to what they were, which is closer to 40% than that they were last season. But who I have at 4, Jude, is Malachi Branham.
Here, wait, before you start on Malachi, I just wanted to say one more thing on Keldon, and
Hmm.
that's just that in all of the inconsistencies of this season, he was consistently getting us like close to 10 points in the clutch. That's the thing that like really
Yes.
gets me about Keldon. And it really, I understand it's a 22 win season, but it really frustrates me when I see all of the hate on Twitter or wherever, because it's like, this dude was literally like putting the team on his back in
Mm-hmm.
like the situation where you would be the least motivated to put the team on your back on the 22 and 60
Yes.
22-23 Spurs, and he did it every night. He did it no questions asked, and he did it with freaking passion. And
Mm-hmm.
people can say, oh well, passion's not, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. He was scoring in the clutch every night, putting his heart on the line like every single game, man. And that's why he averaged 22. That's why his scoring jumped so
Mm-hmm.
much. So anyways, I just wanted to say shout out to Keldon for that, because he really was in the trenches for us last year, man.
The big body. Will always have nothing but love and respect for that guy for what he did this season, no matter how the rest of his career may or may not turn out. Um,
But looking
but
forward.
why I have Malachi Branham at 4 over Keldon, and really why I have Devin, Malachi, and Jeremy over Keldon is simply two things: play style, and they're younger, so they have more opportunity to grow right now than what Keldon is, and he's not even old, but just comparatively. Um,
Right.
and play style wise, I just think Keldon has a play style where he will plateau faster than Devin, Malachi, and Jeremy, because he really is a slasher, and he is kind of, props to him, grown in every category. But when it comes down to it, what is he? He is
He's
a
a little
slasher.
limited.
Exactly, he's
He's very
limited.
good, but
Mhm.
limited, right?
Physically and in terms of play style. Like a player's play style is basically like their signature. Like you can't change that once it's set. You are who you are. You can get better in every category. You can be more efficient. You can become a better ball handler, a better shooter, but your play style is who you are. You can't change Kevin Durant. Like he is Kevin
Right.
Durant. And you can't change LeBron James. Keldon is Keldon. Malachi Branham has a similar play style to Devin Vassell, but I think he has a higher ceiling as far as playmaking than Devin Vassell. Where he lacks comparatively to Devin Vassell is simply defense. But Malachi Branham is already a 3-level scorer. He came into the league a better scorer than Devin Vassell did. Devin Vassell was probably a better 3-point shooter, just a straight up spot up 3-point shooter. But as far as playmaking, taking his guy off the dribble, coming off screens, finding his spots in the mid range, or finding the roll man, the weak side corner, Malachi has all those nuances pretty much down. And similarly to Jeremy Sohan, he improved tremendously from game 1 to game 82. He became, at times, our most valuable player, especially when Devin was out and he was having to fill in the shoes. And then, God forbid, when Trey Jones was out and he was playing starting point guard, he showed us things, you and I, Jude, that we did not expect from him coming out of Ohio State. But when really we should have, because of how much he improved from game 1 at Ohio State to his last game at Ohio State. He really
Yeah.
flipped a switch and became a different player, just like he did for us last season. So there also another reason why Jeremy and Devin might be a little bit higher on the potential ceiling than him is simply he's got Devin Vassell in front of him, right? So he's, at least for now, going to be coming off the bench. And so that will put a cap on his potential. Like, I know, like, Manu Ginobili probably could have made a lot more All-Star games, probably could have
Yeah.
averaged a lot more points. But because there was Tony Parker and Tim Duncan, and, he just kind of had to come off the bench because he
Mm-hmm.
was the odd man out, it limited his personal accolades. And I think when we're talking about potential, that's what we're really talking about, is when it's all said and done, who will have the best
Right.
personal accolades as far as a resume going into the Hall of Fame. And I think because of that, Malachi just might be missing a few medals and trophies on his mantle that Devin and Jeremy and Victor might have.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that like super long term, but that's exactly how we're thinking about the list too. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that obviously that's how I was thinking about it, but I mean like the accolades part
Yeah.
specifically. Um, I had Malachi at number 5, so we had the same 5 overall. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, even before you started talking, Ethan, just when you were right at the beginning of when you started talking, when I realized it wasn't Keldon that you had at number 4, I kind of just the wheels in my brain started churning a little bit, and I can just see where you're coming from. Not to be like I still have Keldon at number 4, but just when you think about, okay, let's just be objective here. Malachi was 19 last year. Did we see what we saw from Malachi from Keldon in Keldon's rookie season. And I know that the G League thing and the different type of
Mm-hmm.
team, that's still a key point. But still, even even in that scenario, we didn't see what Malachi showed this year at 19 years old from Keldon's rookie season. I think even if the scenario was the same, we wouldn't have seen the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that their numbers might not be similar, because Keldon actually kind of translated pretty well, because he was just like, I'm just going to throw myself into the paint and I'll score most of the time because I'm Keldon and big. Anyways, but like that ties into the slasher limitations that you were just talking about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why and that also ties in to how it took sometimes coming in and translating immediately doesn't mean that you're going to have the higher ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Malachi is the perfect example of that. You talk about how his season at Ohio State went. It took him a little to get his feet wet, or it took him a little bit of time to get his feet wet, get comfortable, and then he was a 20-point scorer, one of the winning Big Ten Freshman of the Year, and won a couple March Madness games.
Mm-hmm.
What did we see from him this season? Shot looked flat to start the year. The spots were never bad, but the execution just wasn't there. Man, by the All-Star break, boy, was it.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the playmaking ability that he got to showcase, with the Trey injury. And I mentioned, the lineups earlier, Ethan, and how I was just writing down, everything, all the possible potentialities, because we just have no idea going into this year. One thing I think we could think about a little bit more, just for Spurs fans to have in their brain, is him being the point guard.
Yeah.
You never know what the best lineup could be. But I think we can all agree that Malachi has a higher potential than Trey. As much as I love Trey, if we're just being objective whenever it comes to their ceilings, and it makes sense. Malachi was a projected lottery guy, and Trey was a second-round pick. And I mean, think about it. I mean, if you want to have the best five on the court, maybe Malachi ends up being the starting point guard this year. I mean, I don't think that that's going to happen, but we're talking about Payne and we're talking about Devonte Graham and all that stuff, and I definitely do think, if it came down to it right now, I would have Devin as the starting two, and then Malachi as the backup two, just kind of for scoring purposes and six-man purposes. But we don't know what's in the head of Greg Popovich and the Spurs front office. And, with the way that they experimented with lineups last year, and with the freedom that you now have with a player like Victor Wembanyama,
Mm-hmm.
and on top of that, the experience that Malachi showed last year as a combo guard. And then also, I forget to mention this enough. When I went and watched that Ohio State tape, he also, as the season progressed, kind of had the ball in his hands more there as well.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a little bit more of a realistic possibility. But with his spot up shooting ability and his scoring ability, I still think he's a much more natural two. But when you're playing next to a guy like Devin Vassell, and you have Malachi's skill set, and you take into account he's a little bit, not very much, but just a little bit smaller than Devin, that might be the best avenue, to get him on the court and get the most out of him. And think about the amount of shooters that would be on the floor. See, I'm just talking this whole time, Ethan,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't even have him, at number 4. But all of the stuff I'm talking about right now it's just making me realize, and understand where you're coming from, putting him at number 4.
And like we said before, everyone's list is probably going to be different, just like varied a little bit. So
Right.
like, there's an argument for everyone being at a different position. The only guy that is set for sure is that 7'4" extraterrestrial Victor Wembanyama. And speaking about Malachi being a point, this will be my last point.
Yeah.
We could see some lineups, and I don't know how often we would see this. This would have to be against a team that lacked a big, strong, center.
Yeah.
But we could play Malachi, Devin, Keldon, Jeremy, Vic,
Yeah.
like from time to time.
That was the exact lineup I was thinking. And I know that we've talked about in the past, and I still, when I look at the tape, I still think, if I had to choose, I'm just like, I don't think Victor's gonna consistently. I don't think Victor's gonna play the 5. But man, that lineup, think about it, like a Malachi, Devin,
Mm-hmm.
Keldon, Sohan, like those are your 5 guys on this list.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. Like, those are your best 5. If you really want your best 5 out there, Malachi's probably going to have to play a little point guard. But I'm not mad at that at all, especially with what he showed last year. So yeah, I think, like you said, I agree with you. I think the list will vary, but I think for the most part, most Spurs fans would have Victor Wembanyama And I don't mean in this order. Obviously, Victor will be number one, but they'd have some combination when it comes to their five. Who are your five, most potential Spurs or Spurs with the most potential moving forward? It's definitely going to be Keldon, Devin, Malachi, Jeremy, and Victor for sure.
We'll have some haters out there that'll drop KJ.
Oh yeah,
They'll put Blake Wesley in there.
who are they going to? If you're dropping Keldon, it better be Dominic.
D Barlow, yeah, Barlow's got a lot of potential.
Yo, speaking of, let me stop. Okay, but actually, another thing on lineups, and this is my final point. If there's an injury that happens, like I was telling you how in a lot of the lineups, it looks like Mamu. If Jeremy's not going to be the backup four, it looks like Mamu's going to be that guy. Mm-hmm. If there's an injury, we really might be seeing our boy Barlow as the backup four. And to be honest with you, I'd kind of be excited with it after the summer league. The pick and pop now, I'm like, that would be pretty good. But that's why he's on a two-way, Ethan. Mm-hmm. 45 days if we need him, baby. And he's going to come in and ball.
I love him. Let's see it. Throw him in there next to Vic.
So just to recap, Ethan, give me your list.
I had from 1 to 5. I had Victor Wembanyama, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, Malachi Branham, Keldon Johnson.
And then I had Victor Wembanyama, Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and Malachi Branham. Tell us y'all's top 5 in the comments below, and be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button below if you enjoyed the content. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at SSPN on YT to stay updated. I guess I should say follow us on X at Jude McLaren and at Ethan_Quintero. And then the last thing I'll remind you of is, of course, check out our merch site. We're about to have some more sales starting soon. Look at Ethan. He's got his mug. That's what it could look like if you want to get one too. Be sure to check out our merch site, sspn.spreadshop.com. And then, of course, you can also go ahead and scan the QR code if you're interested as well. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch y'all in the next one. See y'all later.